Hello, hello, and welcome to the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit. And I'm Matt Miller, your host, and want to welcome you to this online conference where we are talking about all sorts of great topics in education, from technology to pedagogy to being connected as an educator to, Google stuff. We've just got a ton of really, really good things, and we're so glad that you're here. And so we're going to kick off this conference with a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart. And you may have noticed at the beginning that I said we have topics related to technology and pedagogy. Those were like the two first words out of my mouth, because in this session, this is where we're going to kind of look at where those two things collide. Like, where we can use technology in the classroom, but also how we can do really good, solid teaching and learning with it, and not just using the technology just so we can get the cool, fancy stuff into our classroom. And we happen to have today two ladies that have written the book on it. I mean, like, literally written the book on it. So we have Tanya, Avrith, and Holly Clark, who have written this great book, The Google Infused Classroom. It's a favorite of mine. I was just telling them before we got on here that I went right back here on my bookshelf to grab my copy of it so that I could show you guys, and I realized it wasn't up there. That's because I was actually using it to look into, to like plan stuff for my blog and my professional development and all of that. It's because it was like sitting out on my desk and I was using it. So this is one that I really, really actually use. So, so before we get too much into this, I'd love for the both of you to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. So Tanya, you want to start?
Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank all of you for watching. We're so honored to be at your summit today. So I'll talk a little bit about myself as a starting point very quickly. I'm Tanya Avrith. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. I now live in South Florida. Director of Educational Technology at Grandview Preparatory School. And I'm also teaching. I push in and co-teach, team teach 3 through 5 innovation, and next semester I'll be teaching middle school innovation. So I'm in the classroom teaching, and I also consult, so I kind of have the best of both worlds.
Uh-oh, you're on mute.
I gotta unmute, that's right. Oh my goodness, rookie mistake. All right, Holly, you are up. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, rookie you are not, but I'm Holly Clark. I live in San Diego, and I'm co-author of this book, but I'm a 20-year teacher and super passionate about, now that we have these tools, how do we use them to amplify teaching and learning in our classroom? So I'm super excited to talk about this today.
Excellent. Very good. And so just to kind of kick all of this off a little bit, just to touch back on what I was talking about a little bit at the beginning, I feel like we've come a long way as far as, growing in the technology use in the classroom, and the devices that we have and the access that we have now and the variety of tools mean that we can do an awful lot. And for a long time, I think teachers had been craving, what are the tools? What do they do? Because it was all so new. And now we continue to get new things out there, but I think maybe we're starting to sort of turn the corner a little bit from what is it and what does it do, to how can I really use this in the classroom to improve learning? And it seems so much to me like a lot of that fundamental basic pedagogy. And I know that word pedagogy kind of scares teachers a little bit whenever you say it. Like when I talk about that, it's just, the art of teaching, just the ideas behind good, solid teaching. And I think that we're at a point now with technology where that is so crucial. It seems to me anyway, that as we turn this corner, maybe this is what people are really craving. So maybe you guys could speak to that a little bit and see, am I like crazy and out there on this, or does this kind of make sense?
Well, I think that, Holly and I speak about this often. We've been having a lot of these conversations for a while about how we can use technology in the classroom, and how technology can amplify really great teaching. I think you're onto something, Matt, because I've been noticing the conversations are shifting a lot more, and people are realizing, well, you know, the shiny toys are going to fade, and unless we really have an understanding of how these tools can really help students learn and make their thinking visible, then we just kind of going to go back to the same kinds of teaching that we did in the past with a device in our students' hands. I know Holly has a really great graphic that's from our book. That's kind of the foundation behind, you know, the philosophy of how we think about teaching and learning with technology. Holly, would you like to kind of share that?
Yeah, but before I do, and thanks, Tanya, I kind of want to say this. I like to say this when I'm out presenting to people. What we're trying to do is take good pedagogy. So when you think of good pedagogy, you often think of UBD, which is Understanding by Design by Grant Wiggins and Jay McAtee. You might think of Making Thinking Visible by Ron Richert and his crew. You might think of Differentiated Instruction by Carol Ann Tomlinson. And now those are really great pedagogical things that we need to incorporate into the classroom. But now we need to use technology on top of that to amplify it. So we have UBD, and we can take technology and make it better instead of taking technology and putting it on top of something. And what I mean by that, here in California in 4th grade, people have to do, I say people because it's supposed to be kids, but they have to do these mission projects. So
the mission projects. Oh my goodness. Those are so notorious. I've heard so much about those from California teachers.
It's horrible. And so the 4th grade parents have to go to Michael's and they have to go get all the stuff and what have you. And so 4th grade teachers might do something like, oh, I have the mission projects, and they might take technology and go, oh, let me do a video about it. And that's taking technology and putting it right on top of it. If they take the mission projects and say, hey, I want to make student thinking visible around these projects, around these missions, what do they know? There's 21 of them, what do you know? And then they take technology and amplify it. That's what we're trying to get at. And so this graphic that Tanya was talking about, let me share my screen if I can really quickly. I'm going to attempt.
Just as you're sharing your screen, P.S. in Florida in 4th grade, it's the Florida Project. So I think it's state by state. 4th grade seems to be the place where we're really focused on our own state, which is great. Yeah, but you're right. It's usually.
Can you see the graphic?
Yes, we sure can. It looks great.
So we wanted to do something and kind of have this framework for looking at effective technology integration. And I think when we use the devices in our classrooms to make thinking visible, and that doesn't have to be like the thinking routines that Ron Richert and his crew talk about. It can just be knowing when students know something and when they don't, and then adjusting our instruction in real time to meet their needs. So just asking them after reading a chapter to say quickly, what did you comprehend about that? And having them talk into something like Flipgrid or Seesaw or something where they quickly articulate their ideas. And that can also be in writing, but I just find that when they can articulate orally, I get better information from them. And then allowing, when we say student voice, in this particular graphic, we mean hearing from every child in your class. So I often say in 2017, if you're not hearing from every child in your class, you're probably doing it wrong, because we have, again, apps like Flipgrid, Socrative, things like that, that amplify our teaching and learning and allow us to hear from every kid in the class in under like 2 minutes. And then this idea of sharing work. That's really important because kids learn best from each other. And so when we allow them to share their work, they get to see what the other kids responded, and they go into the state of metacognition about their thinking, because they're like, oh, that's how Johnny said it. That's interesting. I could have said it that way too. Or Johnny forgot this part. I'm glad I remembered it. And so they get to an understanding that they might not have gotten to if we're not using these tools. So I'm going to unshare that and come back, I hope. Yes, here I am.
Yeah.
And so, our book is based around that framework, and it's something that we kind of feel strongly about is the first step of stopping the focus on, I'm going to use Google Forms, to how am I going to use Google Forms to get at what my students know?
I love that. That's so important. I love the way that you put it, where you said, instead of just laying technology on top of it, let's amplify with it. And I even might think of this is the way that my brain has worked before, is how can we kind of like weave it all together where it's just like kind of part of the way that we think. I know I heard once Chris Lehman, the Science Leadership Academy founder. I've heard him say that technology should be, and he had like 3 words: ubiquitous, something, and transparent. And he explained that whenever it's transparent, it's like we're using it, but we're not even really thinking about it. I like to these are my words, not his. I like to think of it like the photocopier, sort of. I know that's not like a a model use of technology, but with the photocopier anymore, we don't have photocopier training. I mean, we don't have professional development on photocopiers. It's because we kind of know how they work and we go and we use them and we don't even really think about them until they're broken down or the line is really long for them, So it's like eventually one of these days, I think we're going to get to that point where the technology's there, we don't even think about it, and we use it and we incorporate it. But we've got lots of steps to get there. And I think that's what this video is all about. So what I was hoping you ladies might be able to do is kind of, maybe we can take a step back. And I know you mentioned a couple of different things that are, good pedagogical practices we can use in the classroom. There was UBD, there was making thinking visible, differentiated instruction. Can we grab a hold of just like a handful of those that are really important? You could give us, see, I kind of feel like I want to go back in some ways, but not in others. I want to go back to college and get some of that like foundational pedagogy stuff all over again. Now that I've got some years of teaching under my belt, I want to hear that again so I can actually put that into the framework of what I do as a teacher anymore. But obviously that's not really the case. So that's kind of why I thought this video was so important. So anyway, could you guys kind of work us back through some of those and give us that kind of like remedial class like I was just talking about?
So I'm not sure where Tanya went. I don't think other people can see that. Her video is not.
Yep, that's okay.
But for me, I'm going to talk about UBD. So understanding by design. And that was one of the things I first learned when I started going out to professional development. Is I took some courses at an ASCD conference from Jay McAtee and Grant Wiggins, who said that you've got to plan your instruction with the end in mind. And so you don't start with students will be able to. In fact, I could do a whole show, Matt, on students will be able to. Like, I would like to throw that away, please, if someone ever wants to ask my opinion. It's not really what students should be able to do. But anyway, Tanya and I argue about this all the time. But understanding by design says, what is the thing that you want them to end with? What are the thinkings, the understandings that you want them to have? And you're going to plan backwards. And there's a whole, and it's really easy to find. You just Google it. There's an assessment or a template that you do it, and you have an essential question. And since I've learned about understanding by design, I'm now not as into essential questions as I am into through lines, which I learned at Harvard, which is a big question that goes through your whole year. And then you can have little essential questions, but you have an essential question, you say how it is that you're going to get to learn whether or not they're making, answering the essential question. You have these steps along the way for checks for understanding, and then you have the final product. And the final product comes in the form of really a demonstration of learning rather than an assessment that looks like multiple choice. And so that's why we both love understanding by design. Tanya, did you want to say anything about it since you're nice and big?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's the only way I can think about.
Matt, is that just me? Did we lose her?
No, I think we lost her.
Okay, so I'll pick up where what she said. She's back. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's happening.
There she is. Okay, you want to try that again, Tanya? Sorry about that.
And I was like, I'm here. I didn't leave you. I was. I'm not sure what you heard, but I was just saying I can't imagine planning without that at this point, without understanding what it is that I'm working towards, and I mean that's the essential piece, and also for my students to know when they walk into the class, what is it, like if they can't articulate what we're working towards, then the whole lesson is just a bunch of stuff that we're throwing around and doing. So I mean, it's just basic planning that is so essential to strong lessons. And I think we kind of have a lot of these, we have a lot of words and buzzwords that we call just really good UBD. Comes back to backwards planning. Even when we think about project-based learning, I mean, if you don't have a strong plan, then you're just having kids do a bunch of stuff without really understanding what we're working towards. So, I think without that, we're kind of lost every day when we walk in the room.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'll speak from my own experience anyway, that I've felt that feeling of being lost and not having that overarching. And Holly, I love the through lines idea. I wish someone would have mentioned that to me like years and years and years ago. It's not about what can the kid do now. And I sort of feel the same way about essential questions. And I've seen essential questions break down to students will be able to answer 15 out of 18 questions correctly. And it's like, that's not an essential question.
Those are very, very obnoxious and poorly designed learning objectives.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
I agree. I had the privilege or honor of working with Heidi Hayes-Jacobs last year. She was working with one of the schools that I also work with, and she explained essential questions better than anyone I've ever heard explained. She explained them as the chapter headings in a book. So
I like that.
Yeah, so you have your essential question, which is like the chapter, and then the chapter head, it's kind of like the thing that you're working on in that chapter, and those are like your big units. And then throughout that chapter, you're kind of working through that, and that's how she explained it. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Yes. Push back on that. You know me. Because I feel like if you're going to do chapter headings, you are putting out like almost like standards on the board where kids walk in and they know that they're, and I know she's probably saying it different because I worship Heidi Hayes-Jacobs.
No,
but
that's not how she is saying it at all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Not at all. I mean, of all people, that's not how, how she meant it. But
yeah.
it was just sort of a stream, like you were saying, like, you're having your kind of stream throughout the year of like at least understanding the big questions that we're working towards. And she mentioned that students can come up with essential questions, not like it's just these preconceived questions that you have come up with from the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
those can vary, but still having an understanding of what you're working towards is so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Holly.
That so I saw someone give a keynote just the other day who said like the thing that turns kids off, and I also saw this at this other summit where kids spoke, and they said so it was called something about zombie, and David Terrio and Chris Long put it on in Huntington Beach, and the kids were talking about what zombifies you about being in the classroom, and they said when I walk into my classroom and on the board is the standard. Because now I know exactly what's going to happen. I have no curiosity. You've taken everything away from me.
Oh, that's a good point.
But that, like when I hear that, sometimes I go in that direction. And I also go in the direction of I want kids in my perfect classroom to ask the questions. And that's what Tanya is saying. Like the kids can ask the questions as well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so far to this point, for me at least, of the things that I think I can kind of like wrap my hands around and use, I like the through lines idea, the chapter headings. We're kind of, getting through to some of that stuff. Is there anything else out of UBD or out of anything else like that that's one of those like practical things that we can start implementing right away that you think maybe people just don't utilize as much or don't remember or don't know?
Well, I look at it as like also thinking about your like the design of your instruction. The Google Infused Classroom is really to help you design your instruction. Because when you're thinking about planning backwards, there's so many elements that you need to think about. And that's how we've broken up the book. We have these different categories that we look at. So at the beginning, you're looking at like the framework behind UBD. Okay, that's one element. then what we're doing is, well, the first thing you want to know is your students are walking in the room. Where are they? What do they understand? So we do a huge amount of exploration in terms of formative assessment and checks for understanding. So just as they're coming in, like, you can't plan. I mean, this kills me too, like the idea of being overly planned and then having your binder for the year and being like, okay, September 5th, this is my worksheet, without, and I'm like, I've seen this, like, in and pulling out their worksheet. They haven't even met their kids yet. And they're like planning, and they'll pre-photocopy like the first 2 weeks of school so that like their photocopies are done. And I'm like, oh, Google Classroom, let's call a spade, like, and you're, with all of your materials, and you haven't even met your kids, and you don't even know who they are, what they're learning, like how they learn, what their interests are. So that checks for understanding is so important. Like to just see where they are, and using technology to be able to check our students and get to know them and see what kind of learners they are is the best way to do that, to make their thinking visible.
Yeah. And I've you've probably heard it before too, where you've got the teachers that want to get to work right away. They don't want to waste any time. You're talking about at the beginning of the school year and having Google Classroom preloaded and having, your binder. And by the way, I have worked closely with a teacher, he's since retired, who not only had every photocopy made for the next year, he had it for like 2 years. Because nothing was going to change. Yeah, right. Because nothing was going to change for those 2 years. And he already had all those photocopies all ready to go. And actually he retired. And then there was like 2 years worth of photocopies sitting in his closet. But anyway.
And the thing is, I know that these teachers, like, they're not bad. They mean well. They're sometimes you just, don't know what you don't know, or you just kind of in a place where you're like, it's worked. Like, there's no reason to, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix, so we can't do anything about that, but we can certainly try our best to really think about our practice and how we can help students amplify their voice when they're walking into our doors.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think, and to kind of wrap up that idea, I think once we have that idea of who it's just like what you were saying, once we have that idea of who they are and what their interests are, then my goodness, we may end up in like a completely different instructional direction. I mean, there's still, some of the same content that we'll end up doing, but if we can, or maybe the content even shifts because of what our kids' interests are, as long as it meets the standards. I mean, there's just so much that you can do there, which I totally love. So, in your book, there was another thing that I spent a long time looking at these, 4 pages, I think. And it's the 10 characteristics of our learners. And I remember looking at those pages and going, oh my goodness, this is great. And I feel like if I took copies of these and put them up on my wall and just like looked at them while I was lesson planning all of the time, that things would just go better just by themselves. So would you be willing to, either of you or both of you, tell us what some of those characteristics are, maybe a couple of them that resonate with you most?
So Matt, my new keynote is called Meet Generation Z, or Z.
Ooh, nice. Yes.
And it's all about who these kids are, and that they're, well, first we know they're the first real, and I'm going to use the term digital natives, but that's up for interpretation, but they're the first kids born into a world with computers, smartphones, and tablets, and they're hyper connected, and they're tech dependent, but they're not tech savvy. And what we need to teach them is how to learn using these devices, because they know how to use them, but they don't know how to use them to learn. And so we know they're hyper-connected, that they're entrepreneurial, that they want to make, that they want to fail, that they want to have their voices heard. There are kids that are 15 years old right now who are selling companies for $30 million because they know that they don't have to wait for a job or even college. And
yeah. But I want to add to that. I have a student at my school who's a freshman who is and when he was in 8th grade, he was into Minecraft, and he was paying someone to host his Minecraft server. Well, he decided that that made no sense, so he borrowed $180 from his parents, and he bought his own. And in one day, he made $50. In the first month, he made $1,000. Well, a few weeks ago, I was talking. He was telling me this story, and then he showed me how much money he made last month. Around $48,000 a month.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I swear to God.
That's wow. My
I mean,
goodness.
this is not everybody and everywhere, but this is one of my students who, Avi, and then he said to me, this is the funniest part. He's a high school senior, and he's like, he's like, Minecraft's dying out. It's he's like, I'm looking for the next big thing.
Wow. Oh my goodness. And I mean, that of course brings up the idea of the YouTubers and the ones who were the professional Viners, back when Vine was a thing before it died, the quick looping videos. And I mean, it really is, it's getting to be more and more of an information economy and a service economy. And I mean, they're really, it's just kind of amazing how content creators are making, tons of money, but also making a huge difference in ways that we couldn't have, 5 or 10 or 15 years ago.
If you teach 4th grade, then YouTuber, right? Like, but the thing is, do our students really know how to make a YouTube video?
Right.
Like, that will actually bring an audience to their work. Do they really understand the importance that's old-fashioned stuff? Like, my undergrad was in communications media production. Like, do you know how to storyboard? Like, those are still essential skills that you need to learn. And then what apps are you going to use that are the best apps to do that? And that's, they'll know about the latest and greatest, and they'll know about, some kind of music app that you can lip sync to or whatever that might be. But that doesn't mean that they know how to make quality video. This is really like where we still need to teach our kids how to learn using technology.
So I'm really big into this actually right now, Matt, is this idea of literacy versus fluency. And what Tanya is describing is fluency. And we have kids who are literate, so they can pick up an iPhone and they can make it work, and that's literacy. But when you can do something where the outcome is what you want it to be, that's a fluency. And we are always talking about digitally literate and digitally whatever, but we need to be talking, I think, more now about fluency.
Yeah, you're right. It's like, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with when technology becomes transparent. It's like we're not thinking about being able to make this app work and struggling through it. It's like part of our thinking. It's like a second nature, so to speak, whenever we get to that. So yeah, totally love that. So is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on related to these characteristics of the learners, or the next thing I want to get? Yeah, please.
I definitely, well, there's one more element that I think is interesting to know about our students, because I have another student. He's a freshman, and he writes code, and he just published an app on the App Store. It's awesome. It's called Streak Time. You can get it. He'll die that I even shouted it out. But he's Blake. His name is Blake, and he has Blake's Apps, and he put a website. And I looked at the website, and I was like, it was terrible. And I was like, you can write code, but you also need to be able to communicate your ideas, and you need to be able to get it out, and you need to be able to market that. And those are also those skills that, like, yes, our kids are doing these awesome things and they're amazing. But again, back to that Generation Z, that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to bring an audience to their work or how to use social media in the way that is important, which is to like connect with other people and get their ideas out. And there's, they're doing some great things, but there's still so much that we need to teach them. And that's still part of our role, and those shifting fluencies and literacies for them.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where it kind of comes down to us, isn't it? Where if we're able to empower them, or at least help them along that route to get there, then that might be the big thing that we can do as teachers. So this is actually a really nice segue to where I was hoping we would go next in this discussion. Is let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's get down to some examples of how we can do some of these things, because we've sort of been talking theoretically big picture about the kinds of things that we want kids to do. And I know that in this book, but also in the brains of both of you, I know that there are tons of examples of how we can actually do this in the classroom. So let's go ahead and jump in. If somebody's got an example off the top of their head, what are some ways that we can take some of these bigger ideas and actually put them into practice in the classroom?
Well, I can just straight out kind of give you a snapshot of my day-to-day, because I'm, first of all, I manage my workflow using HyperDocs, and I don't use it as a worksheet. I use it as a way to have my instructional design structured. So I have everything kind of flowing through my doc, and there's a ton of technology that's flowing through the entire lesson. So if I'm starting with checks for understanding, I'll start with a Padlet. And that might be, some kind of big question or a do now as my students are coming in, just to kind of grasp where are they.
And the Padlet, real quick, a Padlet's kind of like a big digital bulletin board where kids can tack notes to it and everybody can see each other's notes, right?
Exactly. And it's a great place for them to sort of also see, like, what are other people thinking. That might be where I could start. I might start with a Socrative. So it could be a big question, and I want them to maybe, just to see each other's thoughts as they come in, and you can see everyone on the screen. So that might be where I start. From there, I might then structure my next activity, and that might be group work. So I can structure that through that. I might direct them back onto Google Classroom. I use both. Google Classroom is where I kind of differentiate my instruction. I'm able to post multiple things in one place. I'm able to sort of use it as my blended, so that the conversations and questions can also happen there. I use Screencastify, which is screencasting, at the very beginning as well, so that I have different modalities for teaching. So I will have, not every day, but sometimes I'll have a video of my instructions that I post in Classroom, so that they know, okay, they walk in, they listen, they can, I can walk around, I can hear what they're up to, they can watch what we're working on, they can work through their understandings in the HyperDoc, and then when there's time for some class instruction, they have what they need in one place. They know where everything is. So there's just a few ideas of how I'm using technology right now, just to kind of help design.
Very good.
Very good. All right.
How about you, Holly?
Ooh, I hear some echo. So if I'm echoing, let me know. Am I echoing?
No, you sound good.
Okay. So I'll just use one example, and it's from 5th grade, where we have to sometimes talk about states. And the other day, someone came to me with a state report, and I was like, oh my God, 1985 called. They want their state report back. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. I actually lost sleep over the fact that state report had been handed to me. So I took something simple like Google Maps and Tour Builder, and I had, instead of the kids writing paragraphs about a state, they made a tour on Google Maps, the same paragraphs, the same kind of information that they're going to have, but just throwing technology into something that made it more useful, because now they're seeing the places that they're going. It's becoming more of like they can use cardboard for it. And that was just a very simple way to kind of upgrade something that we were already doing that we needed to learn.
I like that. That's awesome. And I want to actually dig into a couple of the things that I found in your book that I think are some examples too. So first of all, there's this page that just says, ideas to try in your classroom and glossary of terms. And so as I started flipping through this, I'm going to see if I can get this turned around so you can see it. I don't know if you can see the words that I wrote next to this part. Can you see that?
That's
As it's
awesome.
supposed to say, yeah, it's supposed to say so cool. I remember I was reading this on an airplane coming back from a presentation, and this was, yeah, I was just like kind of marking it up as I went. And so let me tell you about this one that I see here. It's the click and listens. And so what that says is, it says to convey, you guys are like cracking up back there, to convey student thinking in a fun, creative way, have students choose a Bitmoji that represents an idea, an emotion, or anything else they want to communicate. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you don't know about Bitmojis, stop the video, push play. We're going to be waiting right here for you when you push play again. Go to bitmoji.com, bitmoji.com. And basically what that does is it lets you create this little emoji, this little avatar, this little cartoon face of yourself with all of these little sayings and different things on it. It's the greatest thing. You can drop it into your text messages, into your emails. You can drop it into student documents. It's so much fun. And so it says they can then use... Oh, I was supposed to give you a second. Yeah, so hit pause if you haven't done that already. Okay, you're back now. Okay, that's good. All right, so then they can use the Google Chrome extension that's called Talk and Comment. Chrome extensions, by the way, if you have Google Chrome as your web browser, they're these little icons you can put up in the corner. I'm going to guess that maybe it's this corner up here for you guys. In the top right corner. I guess I'll find out later if I pointed to the right corner. I don't think that I did. Anyway, okay, they're giving me thumbs up. Maybe I did point to the right corner. Anyway, up in the top right-hand corner, and they're like little programs that run out of your web browser. And so this one's called the Talk and Comment one, and you can use it to record students, or students can record themselves giving an explanation. Then they take the link to that audio comment and they add it as a link to the Bitmoji. So here's the little Bitmoji, the little picture of themselves, and then they can put a link to that picture so people can hear them saying why they put that Bitmoji on there. So anyway, if you do anything in like Google Docs or slides or drawings or something like that, this could be really, really fun. So anyway, that's why I wrote so cool next to that, because I thought that was the neatest idea.
I have to give a disclaimer though with Bitmoji and the littles, because they're...
Oh yes, please do, please do.
Yeah, because we used it with third grade.
Oh dear.
And then we had to pull them off. And well, instead, here's the workaround, because there's some hints and some inappropriate gestures sometimes that the Bitmoji might make.
That's true.
But here's the workaround. So what I did is I pulled off a few into before I did into a drive folder, and then we have a few that we can still work off of. But with the littles, I'd be a little more cautious. I might use it much more freely with high school students with a disclaimer. So
yeah. Thank you for making that clarification. I thought that was pretty important. And then the other thing, if I can, to continue geeking out about the book here, is that at the beginning, and you guys have kind of talked about this all throughout, and I think, Holly, this was your big graphic, because I wrote the words, I think you can see it, yes, yes, and yes on this. And so it was asking those questions. How can I make student thinking visible? How can I use technology to hear from every student in the class? And how can I allow students to actively share their work so that they can learn from one another? And I've got to say, I think this brilliantly boils down the 3 ways that technology can kick learning up to the next level the very best way. I think that these are some of the, like, if you're looking for the superpowers of technology in the classroom, I really feel like these are the ones where we can help kids make their thinking visible. And I mean, there's so much research that shows the power of images and how our brain thinks in images anyway. And if we can make it visible, then it just, I mean, it clicks in the brain and it's easier to communicate. And then to be able to hear from everybody, because we've all had those classes where you ask questions and 1 or 2 kids respond and that's it. gone are those days, at least to some extent, if we want to hear from kids in a different way. And then how can they share their work so they can learn from one another, or even take it to a bigger audience than just their class? I think you guys just beautifully illustrated those three huge powers that technology has. So thank you for doing that.
Well, and when we think about like that whole visible thinking piece, which is so important, that's and when we think of UBD, that's those demonstrations of learning. That's when students are able to demonstrate where they are in their thinking process. And when we're able to see that, and we're able to curate that learning using something like Seesaw, which I'm completely insanely obsessed with. I'm not like, I use it more than any other tool, hands down. We use it 10 times a day in our class.
Can you give them the 10-second explanation of what Seesaw is, just in case?
Awesomeness. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So that's the 1 second. Let's hear the 10-second now.
So Seesaw is a I guess it's a web app and an app on if you have iPads, and it's a digital portfolio curation tool. And there's a free version, which allows you to have a class and have your students basically share a picture of what they're working on, add audio and writing. They can take videos of themselves, up to 5 or 10 minutes, I can't remember, and be able to show their learning that way. They can it links to Google Drive, so if they're working in Drive, they can curate their work in Drive into their portfolio. It's basically like the Swiss Army knife of all apps. It allows you kind of to do everything. You can write, you can draw over it, so you can explain your thinking and make arrows if you're using the iPad version. Just probably like the most transformational tool like of the year. And I know I hate saying that word, but it really has changed the way that I'm able to show growth. I have a school, we pay for it. So I also have the ability to link it to skills and to be able to show skills growth over the year. So it's really powerful. So that was over 10 seconds.
Yes, no, that's okay. That was great. So keep going where you were before. Sorry.
I don't remember what I was saying now. Mummy brain.
We were talking about making thinking visible, I think.
We were. Well, so that, that's the whole idea, is that now my students can create something. I can see their thought process unfold. And now I have evidence of growth. I can see where, little Johnny was in August when he walked in the door. Maybe he's a second grader and he's learning how to read, and he's still not where he should be, but we're working towards that. And so you can check fluency at the very beginning. And then, in September, we could do another fluency check, and you can hear his growth, and he can hear his growth, and he can listen back. And, a simple thing like that, where he's just reading off of a picture, is so powerful to be able to check where they are. And then when we get them to the point where they're creating to show their thinking, as opposed to giving them a worksheet, they're going to create a book in Book Creator. Really researching, and they're looking, and they're finding images, and they're able to add video and then voice comments in the Book Creator. So Book Creator is another one of our favorite apps, and now it's available on Chrome.
Oh, that's right.
And it's awesome. We did a collab.
In January, it's real-time collaboration. That's next month.
Oh my God. I can't tell you how obsessed my students are with Book Creator. We just created a collaborative book with a school in Haiti. Some of our students explained in 4th grade, about where they live and about Florida, and then they translated it into Creole. And they added images. It was awesome. And then when I went to Haiti and I worked with the kids in Haiti, and I taught them how to use Book Creator, and then the students in Haiti created, where the students in Florida had to ask questions. They answered the questions, and we created this. Actually, I can share the link. I don't know if you'll be sharing links, but I can share the link so that people can see. It wasn't beautiful because it was done in 45 minutes, but the idea of them being able to build real-time empathy and like an understanding at a very basic level of like that there's these other people, and we all love pizza. Everyone loves pizza.
Right.
That was really powerful stuff. So, that was just one element, but I have my students using it to, instead of, spelling tests every week, they're developing their own spelling books. And they're curating that in 3rd grade. So there's just so many things that we're able to do now that we couldn't do, now are free and available at our fingertips with the technology that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is great. So that kind of dug into, I mean, lots of things, but kind of the visible thinking. We even talked about being able to share work. I mean, you kind of weaved all of those in. So, Holly, maybe I can throw it over to you for a second. And, can you talk about, I think the one that we haven't talked about as much is the question, because I'm kind of going back to those 3 questions that I wrote yes, yes, and yes next to in your book. So the question was, how can I use technology to hear from every student in the class? Is that something that you could speak to?
Yeah, I just think that there are some tools, and that's kind of what we talk about, that help you do that really effectively and quickly. The creative, oops, I'm sorry, I have a dog telling me that she wants me to hold her. But
we need to see the dog now. Can we see the dog, or was that not possible?
Not possible right now.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
But I'd love to show her, but she's just staying over there. Anyway, Socrative, which is like in the 10-second thing, it is an app that's really easy to use that allows you to make student thinking visible and puts all of their answers in a stream so they can see each other's answers as they go up. And then it has this amazing thing that lets you vote. And so you can start a vote and all of the answers go on the student screen and they can see what each student said, and then they vote on the best response. So hearing from kids like that, or I'm very obsessed with Flipgrid, hearing from kids in a Flipgrid. And what I'm really into right now, Matt, is simplicity. I only want to show teachers or use in my own classroom things that are simple and easy to use. So that if the kids are doing something, I can go quickly to an app, use it, and hear from them right away. So that's my number 1 word right now, simplicity.
I love that. I'm totally all about that. I've for the longest time, I've talked about how, as a teacher in my own class, and now even with other teachers, I say, there's so much out there. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but only grab hold of the things that you think can really move the needle for learning in your classroom. And there's I see a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of stuff over the years, and very, very judicious about what I will let into a classroom with kids and what I will suggest to teachers. And I won't just, suggest any old thing. And if it takes 14 steps when it could take 3, then I'm not going to suggest the one that has 14 steps.
Well, Matt. No, yes, I mean, I have 45 minutes when I work with my students, and I'm working right now. I'm teaching K5. After the break, I'll be 3-5. That I will, like, the idea of opening up the device to take, like, the thought of, like, oh my God, is this worth the 10 minutes it's going to take to potentially log on right now? Like, it better be good. Like, it better be worth going to be using that. So I totally agree with that. And as someone who's working with the young learners who are not yet fluent, just in terms of like their reading and writing, tempting to say, you know what, I could do this. I'm not going to use the technology. And I want to point this out because time to teach them how to use it, or we will never get to the point where they're fluent enough that it becomes ubiquitous in our teaching. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, like, elements is really key. Like, if you're kind of on the fence about using the tools, we do need to teach them at a young age how to, so that by the time they get to our, middle school, that it's comfortable and they're using it and it's not a big deal anymore.
Yeah, wow, that makes sense. You know what? I'm going to be real honest here. For a long time, whenever I've done professional development with teachers and in my blog and everything, I've always said down to an activity where I felt like you could use the technology or you could not use the technology and you could have the same result. I'd say don't even worry about the technology. That's always been the place that I've come down, is that the technology has to be able to improve instruction before I'm willing to use it. Said it right there. Now, all of a sudden, like in this very moment, you've started to sort of shift the foundation of what I think. And I'm going, you know, may be a push. It may be equal as far as using the technology versus not, what the outcome's going to be. Digital side of it, or the fluency side of it, which is what we want to get to, may be worth and trying that. So there, you just shifted my own thinking right there in that moment. So thank you for that.
Well, and it doesn't have to be always, but it has to be intentional sometimes, or we won't be moving forward with their understanding of how to use it.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So
oh my goodness. Oh, this has been great. This feels like the keynote speech to the Ditch That Textbook Digital Summit, because this is the first one. We've talked about some really important big picture things. This is the way that a conference feels to me, is that you get something like inspiring and thought-provoking at the beginning, and then you go into all of these sessions and you start to get all of these practical ideas. And this has been practical too, but it's also been such a great way, I think, to kick all of this off. So thank you guys so much for doing this. If you're watching this and you haven't heard of this book, you know, we're not in this to like sell books or anything like that, but I just think this one is so well laid out, and it's full of, I've got to show you, hang on a second, I'm going to put my microphone down here. I got to kind of like lean into it so that you guys can still hear me. It's full of, especially in the second half, it starts to lay out all of these apps that you can use, all of these websites that you can use, and it gives a whole bunch of like practical ideas. I think I hit Screencastify twice. See, there's Flipgrid. Holly's all excited that I'm showing Flipgrid, I'm sure. But I mean, it's just, it shows the very practical side, but it also shows the big picture side. So I love this book. I think it's great. If you don't have a copy of it, there's a link down below. Tanya mentioned that she was going to share a link to her project. That if you're on the ditchsummit.com website, it's down below the embedded video. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can head over to ditchsummit.com and find their speaker page, and the links will be down below the video. So, oh, this is so great. Okay, so let's wrap this up real quick. Tanya, if the people that are watching now, if they want more from you, if they want to get connected with you, where are you online? Where can they go find you?
It's pretty easy. You find me either at Tanya Avrith on Twitter or tanyaavrith.com, and you can check out my blog. So
very good.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And please connect. I wish, honestly, I'm so happy to answer questions. It like makes my day when someone tweets out. So please connect.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I am insanely jealous that you have one of those names where it's not like everybody else, and that domain wasn't bought years ago. mattmiller.com has not been available. So yeah, I'm very jealous of that. Holly, what about you? If they want to get in contact and in touch with you and need more Holly Clark, where can they find it?
So I'm having dog barking in the background, but it's easy to, hollyclark.org and hollyclark.edu. And I too love to hear from people. And I write a lot about making thinking visible on my blog. So you can find stuff on there. I'll mute now because the dog's in the background.
That's okay. That's okay. It's not very loud, so it's no big deal. So
well, and I just also want to say I bought your latest book, Ditch That Homework, and I love it. And I've been handing it around to different colleagues and encouraging people to buy it. So it's thank you for this movement, because I see what you're doing as a movement, and we're beyond honored to be part of this summit, and we so respect everything that you do. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. The check's in the mail for that, by the way. No, we didn't plan that, I promise. So, okay, this is wonderful. I've got to let you guys go, but I don't want to. But I so appreciate everything that you've shared with us, and thanks so much for being a part of this.
Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to do this. You're all so wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Matt.